We got 7 different news stories from 7 different outlets, guys. It's time for another episode of Regan's Newsround. Let's go. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. This is REGANELITE here with another episode of Regan's Newsround. A few days behind on schedule, but I still think these stories that I was going to originally cover are still important. So I hope you guys find them interesting, informative, and helpful to you. So we start with The Guardian with the headline that 6 times more newly homeless families than new social housing England data shows. The councils are forced to put people in expensive temporary accommodation as only as 8,386 social homes built in 2022-2023. We are in desperate need of homes. I think this is pretty much a clear caveat that everybody knows that one of the biggest crises that we have, of one of many crises caused by the Conservative government and other factors, is of course the lack of housing. And one of the issues is obviously been getting the permission to build those houses. There's been a lot of legislations and laws that are kind of makes it very hard for people to build homes, and we need to ease those to do so. I think around the other thing as well is affordability, being able to afford homes. Homes just cost way too much, and it's just forcing a whole generation of people who are coming through, because as time goes on, it's always next generation coming along. People just don't have the money that their previous generation had, and what's happening in a lot of cases is basically parents and that when they become grandparents and so on, the money is being passed down to the next generation, because whatever money they have down to the next generation, because the next generation down can't afford their own family, even with both parents working full-time jobs, and they're still not able to afford a decent home. And it's, quite frankly, it's ridiculous. Even there was a time where a single young man roughly around my age would be able to do a decent job, earn a decent job and earn a decent pay, and be able to live on his own. But it's just not affordable, and this is a a crisis that is not going away and needs to be dealt with. They need to make homes cheaper, they need to build more homes, and they need to make it easier for people to get onto the housing market. It's not good enough at all. So newly homeless families are now outnumber newly built social homes by 6 to 1, according to official figures from England released on Thursday that exposed the widening gap between the increasing need and the availability of cheap homes. Only 8,386 new social homes were built in England in 2022-2023, while the same period 52,800 households were accepted by council as requiring help because they were homeless or in danger of becoming homeless. The analysis was conducted by the National Housing Federation. Matt Downing, the chief executive of Crisis, a homeless charity, said the construction figures were a disgrace and hid the immeasurable human impact of homelessness. The gap is forcing councils to spend £1.7 billion a year renting temporary and often overcrowded accommodation for more than 100,000 households. More than any time in the past 25 years, councils have warned the bills is forcing many town halls towards bankruptcy. See, that's the thing. The temporary accommodation, that costs money, and it adds up. And that's coming out of the council's budgets as well, and that's driving councils towards bankruptcy as well. It's all connected together. It's all connected together, as you guys understand. And this is why I myself and others are screaming at the top of our lungs. We need to build more homes. We really do need to build more homes, guys. We really do. There has also been a 10% annual increase in the number of households threatening with homelessness because landlords have served them with a no-fault eviction, but the government has pledged a ban. And there has been a 19% annual rise in the number of households to which councils accept they own a main homelessness duty. The number of households in temporary accommodations also hit a record high. Homelessness Link, which represents the campaigning charities, called the data shocking, and added that one consequence was family living in a damp and mould. Whoever's family, the next government must build the 90,000 social homes per year that we need, so people have affordable, secure homes to live in, said Rick Henderson, its chief executive. Absolutely, people need to be able to afford homes, guys. This is a no-brainer, really. People need to be able to afford their homes. They need to be able to have a place to live. to give them that comfort and that a bit of security, so that they're able to go out there and secure a job. At least those who are able to do so. Homelessness is a horrible thing for anyone. Nobody wants to be homeless. Wants to be homeless, and it is certainly not a lifestyle choice. Social homes are built to provide the cheapest rent, typical at half local market rates. And while there's been a slight increase in construction from the historic low of the pandemic of the year 2020-2021, the output remains far below the 35,000 built in 2010-2011 and the 44,000 built in 1995-1996. Housing Association says the problem was caused by the government's funding set at historic low levels after a 63% cut to the affordable housing budget in 2010. Kate Henderson, the chief executive of the National Housing Federation, said the chronic shortages of social housing is having wide-ranging impacts, not just for those becoming homeless or living in poverty and overcrowding, but also in the private rented sector, where increased demand from people who cannot access social housing has pushed up rents and in turn house prices. This is also costing the government and indeed the taxpayer huge sums, with cost of temporary accommodation, homelessness prevention and the housing benefit bill soaring. Yeah, we just obviously said about the cost here to it. Obviously it's going to be billed as it comes to it as well. Last week, the Sadiq Khan, the Mayor of London, announced a programme to help councils build 10,000 existing private homes over the next decade to boost social housing stock, although they will not increase the overall supply. The Department for Levelling Up Housing Communities has said, "We know building more homes is also part of the solution, and we're doing so as part of our long-term plan for housing. This includes our multi-billion-pound programme to build thousands of new affordable homes with a large number of social rent. Our landmark renters reform bill will also give tenants greater security in their home, and last week we increased the local housing allowance, so 1.6 million low-income households will be around £800 a year better, or will be better off on average year." Yeah, well, it still doesn't change the fact that people are still struggling to be able to pay their bills. It's not enough. It's not enough. It's a simple answer. We hear them saying these things, but it's one thing to say it and it's another to actually show it and prove it, and we're not getting enough of this at all. So more needs to be done, that is for sure. So we're going to look at it from another angle, guys. This one from Sky News, it's a similar angle to them, but it's more to do with the children, which is a great concern, guys. The headline is "Thousands of children face Christmas without homes as a number of temporary accommodations at record high." Government statistics now show 105,750 households were in temporary accommodation this year, a figure housing campaigns brand is shameful. Again, we've talked about this already. The need for homes is imperative, and the fact that we have children here not getting homes is just it's horrible. They're the ones who are the future of our next generation, and we need to look after them. We really need to. And it should not just be a case of trying to look after them during the coldest period of the season. It should be all year round. We should be doing everything we can to give them the best possible futures possible. And this doesn't help at all. It really does not. The number of households and children in temporary accommodations in England hit a shameful record highs, with nearly 139,000 children living without a permanent home, according to the new figures. The government statistics on homelessness shows between April and June this year, 105,750 households were in temporary accommodation, a new high since record began 25 years ago, and an increase of 10.5% compared with the end of June last year. Overall, 64.4% of households in temporary accommodation, including dependent children, were 138,930 living in temporary accommodation, up from 131,500 at the end of March. So right there, look at that. That's how much temporary accommodation is being used at the moment. Just think about that. Housing Charity Shelter said the figures show the country has hit yet another shameful record at housing emergency, as it warned nearly 135,000 children were now facing spending Christmas without a safe and secure place to call home. That's absolutely disgusting. Children. We're not even talking about adults or families. We're talking about children here, guys. Other figures published by the Department of Levelling Up Housing and Communities, the DLUHC, showed a total of 73,660 households were assessed as needing help from their local authorities due to being homelessness or threatened with homelessness. Of the 34,850 households that were assessed as being threatened with homelessness, 6,640 households have been issued with a Section 21 notice, also known as the no-fault eviction notice, with the government promise to ban its landmark renters reform bill. Meanwhile, there were less than 9,000 new homes built for social rent available in the latest financial year. It came as yet another council in Scotland declared a housing emergency, blaming in part the failures with the UK asylum system. Shelter Chief Executive Polly Neddon blamed decades of failure to build enough social homes combined with record high private rents, and said many are facing months or even years in temporary accommodation, where their lives are stuffed into cardboard boxes and they can be forced to move at a drop of a hat. And we've seen people being moved at a drop of a hat when the homelessness guys in the tents in the homelessness outside a hospital clinic, and they were forced to move. Despite the fact they have nowhere else to go, and not only that, their tents were taken from them and some of their belongings were also taken from them from that report, which is absolutely disgraceful. Rick Henderson, the CEO at Homeless Link, said the statistics were shocking. The cost of providing temporary accommodation is crippling local authorities across the country to the extent that some are filing for bankruptcy and others are on the verge of going under. Yeah, we covered most of that already. At the same time, people living in temporary accommodation, including 100,000 children, too often experience poor conditions such as overcrowding, severe mould and damp. Again, we've covered that already. But the government has promised to ban Section 21 notices through the Renters Reform Bill. I think, yeah, not sure how much more I want to add here. Tom Darling, campaign manager of the Renters Reform Coalition, said the statistics are yet another reminder of the urgency of abolishing the Section 21 evictions, which are key drivers of the homelessness as well as a source of consistent insecurity of millions of tenants. Matt Dowling, Chief Executive of Crisis, says the level of social homes being built is a disgrace and accused the government of a failure to address the chronic shortages of genuine affordable homes. A total of 63,605 affordable homes were completed across England in the year to March 2023, while the government said a 7% increase on the previous 12 months in the highest delivered since 2014-2015. Spokesperson said it's spending $2 billion over 3 years as part of a cross-government strategy to build homes for rough sleepers, giving financial support for people who find a new home and prevent evictions. The statistics don't lie. They still doesn't mean that they're saying this. They're saying they provide money. But clearly that money is not enough. They said the government has built multi-million-pound programs to build thousands of new affordable homes with larger reforms of social rent. The usual stuff, guys, that we've already heard pretty much. So yeah, once again, guys, from the children's perspective here, this is absolutely horrific, and it's just a terrible, terrible ordeal. All I can say is we've just got to keep talking about these things, guys, as hard as it is. I know it's not comfortable, especially at this time of the year when it's supposed to be a joyful, positive time of the year, and it's actually the worst time of the year for some people who have absolutely nothing. And it's important for us to remember that. So, hopefully, we have a general election soon, so that we can perhaps they can accommodate the Labour government. A Labour government could, cross fingers, there'll be a Labour government that could potentially do more. But there has been said that obviously this, some people have said that this has been an issue before 2010 as well. So someone needs to address the issue because it's only going to get worse. So the next one I got for you guys is from the BBC, going a bit different here. So the headline is the government has intervened in Abu Dhabi's bid to buy the Telegraph. So this was a couple of days ago. Excuse me, as most was the articles. So I covered a video a while back about how some of those who are in the race to buy the Telegraph, and it looks like Abu Dhabi are looking to buy it, which is not really a good idea. I think it's already bad enough with some of the runners and riders after it, but a country buying a British Telegraph, that's very questionable indeed. So the Culture and Media Secretary has intervened to scrutinise the sale of the Daily Telegraph to a company backed by the Abu Dhabi ruling family over concerns around public interest. So it's not it is technically directly because it's somebody who's taking money from Abu Dhabi in order to get control of the Telegraph, which means they'll be very in favour of, which means it'll be very biased paper for them. That's the only thing, though. The title was taken over by Lloyd Banks as it sought to recover $1.1 billion owed by the owners to Barclays family. An Abu Dhabi backed firm this month agreed to pay the sum and take control. It was understood that after the debt was paid to Lloyds, the paper would be passed on swiftly to the new owners. Sheikh Mansour Zayed Al Nahyan, best known for its UK ownership of Manchester City Football Club, has thrown its considerable financial heft behind the real bird IMI, the investment consortium looking to take control of the Telegraph and the Spectre magazine. The consortium is run by Jeff Zucker, the former president of CNN. As the BBC reported on Wednesday, the Secretary of State Lucy Fraser did not feel it was appropriate to intervene in a debt repayment transaction. However, she said she previously indicated and now confirmed the transfer of politically important Telegraph to what is essentially a foreign power is a matter the UK government and others regulators need to scrutinise. Mr Fraser has now issued a public interest intervention notice (PIIM) because of concerns that she has had about the sale of the Telegraph Media Group, which owns the Daily Telegraph and the Sunday Telegraph, to warrant further investigation. The deal being referred to the Competitions and Market Authority, the CMN, which will look at jurisdictional and marketing and competition matters, and the media regulator Ofcom, which will look at the need for accurate presentation of news and for free expression of opinion in newspapers, she said. Both the CMA and Ofcom have been asked to report back by the 26th of January 2024. On Friday, Ofcom said it was inviting written submissions to be sent by the 13th of December. The government's PIN order does not apply to the sale of the Spectator. Jeff Zucker is a very experienced news chief and hit back at any suggestions that the editorial independence of the Telegraph, the Sunday Telegraph and the Spectator would be compromised by the Gulf ownership. But former editors, senior politicians and grassroots conservatives have voiced grave concerns about the deal. Simply put, the Barclays family, who has twisted and turned for many years from Lloyds to preserve their ownership of the Telegraph, and now replace their Lloyds debt with a debt to the Abu Dhabi royal family. Lionel Barber, former editor of the Financial Times, has pointed out that the UK has allowed a convicted fraud, Sir Conrad Black, who owns the Telegraph and the son of a former KGB agent, Evry Lebegev, to own the Independent and the Evening Standard. But former Telegraph editor Charles Moore insists that the nature of those involved here, a foreign state alongside a Tory-leaning paper, makes the circumstances different. Sheikh Mansour is taking a financial risk in wiring the money to Lloyds when it is unclear whether he will ever get control of the assets he is paying for. But as someone close to the deal said, it seems to be a risk he's willing to take. If I'm absolutely honest, guys, I think they should pull the plug on this deal. I think the government should pull the plug on it. I think it's way too dangerous for Abu Dhabi to have a hand in the media. Another country to have a hand in the media here. I know we already have some foreign investors having too much control as it is, guys. I get that, but we're talking about a country here. We're talking about a country here who could have a huge amount of influence on the British public with what it has, and no matter what Ofcom or whatever they put, they can still influence the British public. And I think that's way too dangerous. I personally do not want them getting the hold of the Daily Telegraph, if I'm honest. I say the same thing about most of the owners who are bidding for it as well. But I think this should be a plug that should be pulled immediately. Whether it will be or not will remain to be seen. But I think it's way too dangerous for any of us, for the matter. Guys, while you're here as well, if you can hit the like button, we greatly appreciate. Share it across social media and hit that bell notification icon so you'll be notified of when I go live or when I upload another video, guys. It's just a little plug in there. So the next one I got is exclusive from the Eye, guys. It's going Labour here. So the headline is the EU will be Labour's number one priority for the British foreign policy, says Lammy. The EU ambassador describes the dealing with Starmer as like honey on toast in comparison to Tory ministers, said the shadow foreign secretary. So it looks like David Lammy here is giving more indications that Labour are looking to cosy up potentially with the EU, not so much as to rejoin the single market or rejoin the European Union. But again, it emphasises once again how they want to establish closer ties with our neighbours across the pond, and it makes sense to do so. So the European Union will be Labour's number one priority when it comes to foreign affairs, David Lammy has said. The Shadow Foreign Secretary said his party would hold formal meetings with the blog every 4 months at the least if elected into government, and promised a shift in the UK-EU relationship. EU ambassadors have described the dealing with Labour's leader Sir Keir Starmer as like honey on toast in comparison to the fractious relationship with Conservative politicians, he said. There's no doubt that there will be a lot more. It'll be a lot more easier to negotiate things with the EU under a Labour government than it would be a Conservative government. I think they've made too many complaints. They've made too many issues. The Brexit deal they promised us has not been what was fulfilled as well. So I do believe that Labour will have a much better constructive talks with the European Union, but how they will go and what they will be, it still remains to be seen, guys. Speaking on the latest episode of the Eyes podcast, Labour's Plan for Power, Mr Lammy also suggested the Tories may have to shift their position on the EU if Poland suggests the public regret the Brexit vote is correct. That's quite a bold statement to make on there. But he argued that he could not contemplate a political consensus to rejoin the EU in the current political cycle, insisting his focus as Foreign Secretary would be to work in the national interests of both Leave and Remain voters. The European Union is our number one priority. It is our number one priority because it is in our backyard, Mr Lammy has said. It's our number one priority because there is a war in Europe, and I believe our future prosperities and security is predicted on good relationships with our European partners. He said that there would be a tonal shift under a change of government with our neighbours in Europe if Labour were to win the next election, with a move to return to more regular talks. I think we need to get back to structural dialogue, he explained. I think listeners will find it extraordinary that the UK government does not sit down with the European Union in a structured way every 4 months or every 6 months to discuss the issues that matter to both parties. We need to get back to that. Mr Lammy, MP for Tottenham, says Labour does not have the divisions on Europe that the Conservative Party had, and argued that they have been recognised by EU officials. I did a meeting with Keir Starmer and European ambassadors, and they described the tonal difference as being like honey on toast, he said. Sir Keir has built a very good relationship with Olaf Scholz in Germany, the German Chancellor, he said, adding that the chemistry between Starmer and the French President Emmanuel Macron has also been very strong. Well, considering he's very likely to be the next PM, and he's looking like he's going to be a Labour government, obviously you want to try and build those relationships as soon as possible. I think the world will be much happier with the Conservatives pushed out of power, that is for sure. I know there's rightfully criticism and question marks about the Labour Party, and I totally understand that, but and I will continue to hold them account, as will other certain media outlets out there, guys, and I really do mean that. But we also need something different, because we've had the same political party for 13 damn years, and I'm kind of fed up of it. Labour has set out plans to form a new security pact with the EU to work closely on threats of organised crime or energy security, for example. Mr Lammy said the conflict in Ukraine underlined the need for defensive security pacts, and said this would be cast as wide as possible to include security issues in relation to migration. Boris Johnson rejected a defence security pact with the European Union, and we said we think a security pact is fundamental, Mr Lammy said. I think war in Europe demonstrates that. Yeah, that's an obvious one there. These are important processes that the European Union goes through in relation to terrorism and other things that we pull out of their security pact. So I think it's really important. Asked if he is seen any polling that points to regret over leaving the EU among some Brexit voters, Mr Lammy said it could force the Conservatives to change their attitude towards the EU. A recent report by UK in Changing Europe found 16% of the 2016 Leavers now say they would vote Remain, compared to 6% of Remainers who said they would vote Leave. I've seen the polling and the change in mood, but at the moment the Conservative Party still set their face against the European Union broadly, said Mr Lammy. They're a pragmatic party that historically over their many hundreds of years have changed their minds on things. They haven't changed their mind on this, that if the polling is right then they might do, but they haven't at this moment. Pressed on whether there would have to be a cross-party consensus before the UK could think of rejoining the EU, Mr Lammy said, my sense is that Europe would demand one. Britain would have to demonstrate that. So I don't see that over the next political cycle. Yeah, absolutely. You need both main political parties to be on board if in all seriousness the UK was to join the European Union. I wouldn't say rejoin, but to join the European Union. There would have to be a strong consensus in Parliament, strong consensus from both political parties, and a strong consensus from the vast majority of the British public. Need all those things to happen if we want to join the European Union. The resignation of former PM David Cameron following the Brexit referendum result described by Mr Lammy as a scuttering off and not his finest hour, he said. He suggested Lord Cameron, the now Foreign Secretary, was guilty of believing his own spin. I think there are a lot of people who feel very strongly that scuttering off after that decision was not his finest hour, he said. I've always been in the view that Etonins make wonderful actors. I'm watching The Crown at the moment. Dominic West, who plays Charlie, plays him very well. But I'm not sure that they make great politicians. They slightly believe too much in their own academically, and I think David Cameron is guilty of that. Yeah, he is. Lord Cameron has always argued that the decision to call the Brexit referendum in 2016 after his party won a shock majority in 2015 was an inevitability. Yeah, but you didn't say you were going to run away like a chicken after it either. He was actually, just before I go any further, like, David Cameron was actually asked that if he lost the vote, would he resign? And he said no. And what happened? When the vote happened, he resigned as well. I remember that. I remember him asked that. Pressed on whether this was true, Mr Lammy said at the time to come back together and heal, not to look at the past. He added, I don't want to go back and I want to look forward. As I said, it was a bitter time. The country has found itself torn apart. We now need to come back together and to heal, and I generally believe that Keir Starmer represents that, coming together, turning the chapter, turning the page, and moving on to a united posture. Sadly, after the decision to leave the European Union, Boris Johnson could have begun his period as a Prime Minister bringing the country back together. He decided instead to prosecute or behave in office solely for one side of that debate. It is important for me that if I have the privilege of being Foreign Secretary, to try and pursue the job of Britain's national interest, that is in the national interest of everybody in the country, however they voted 8 years ago. And that bit down there is just a reminder, guys, if you want to hear it yourself, you can check out the 4th episode of Labour's Plan for Power podcast, wherever you get your podcast from iNews, guys, if you want to have a listen to that, if you want to. So what do I make of some of David Lammy's comments there? I think, it's just it's kind of the line of what you would expect from Labour. I think it's my honest opinion. Interesting that he really is pushing out there on the emphasis of the European Union and working on a better relationship. This is a positive thing. This is a very positive thing, and we need that. So this will also, reducing the red tape should be a priority as well. So they should look to try and bring closer ties together. That is for sure. We definitely need that as a nation. But obviously, that doesn't mean to say that we're going to let Labour off the leash. We have to hold them to account. And there are a lot of people who don't trust Labour, and rightly so. And they need to be held to account for their actions and what they do. So it's very important to emphasise that as well. So the next one here, guys, is from The Independent. The headline is the National Healthcare Service is warning over winter bugs as hundreds are in hospital with norovirus. Norovirus is one of the most common infections, cause of vomiting and diarrhea. Whatever you catch, whatever you get, it's never good. But norovirus here, vomiting and diarrhea, is, as I'm sure some of you may or may not have experienced. If you've experienced those things, especially diarrhea, it's not very nice. I've experienced it. It's really, really nasty, and I hope none of you guys experience it ever. And our NHS is already struggling enough with a lot of things already. But winter bugs, as unfortunately is inevitable, and every year we always have our NHS already in crisis, and this is just going to compound it. Obviously, the cold winter is just going to compound it even more, guys. The NHS has sent a warning over norovirus after figures showed hundreds of patients are in hospital with the winter bug. Health chiefs warned that the impact on hospitals from a seasonal virus is likely to be made worse by the current cold weather. An average of 351 adult hospital beds in England were occupied last week by patients with diarrhea and vomiting and norovirus-like symptoms. According to the NHS data, this is nearly 3 times the average of 126 for the equivalent week in 2022. There were an average of 13 children with the virus in hospital each day, compared with just 3 at this point last year. Admissions for other winter bugs such as flu or respiratory syncytial viruses, RSV, however, are down compared to last year, with an average of 153 beds closed a day last week due to flu, compared to an average of 472 in the same week last year. On average of 140 beds were closed due to RSV last year, compared to 145 last year. cold, flu, bugs, viruses. You're going to be getting lots of stuff, obviously, during the cold time. So just a couple of things. Obviously, if you can put on the heating, please do. If you can't afford to put on the heating, wear more clothes. Please wrap blankets around you. Put more your feet as well. Very important, guys. If you not just socks, but maybe put on another pair or two of socks there, because that can come up into your body, the cold from there. So make sure you wrap your hands as well. If you've got gloves, if you have any of them at home, put them on. Keep your hands warm. All these kind of stuff. Yeah, if you're struggling with paying the bills and you're struggling to keep warm, there's just a couple of things. Just make sure you wrap yourself warm, all parts of your body, as much as you possibly can to keep yourself warm. Anything that can help you, stop you from getting sick or illness, any of those things. Just keep yourself warm and try and look after yourself as best as you possibly can. Obviously, some people can't afford to put on the hot tap as well, but if you can, hot water bottle as well. There's lots of things. I'm sure some of you in the comments section down below will have some ideas for those who are a bit cold and need some ideas to keep warm. Please share them. If you have some free ideas that may be useful, feel free to put some in the comment section down below, guys. The NHS National Medical Director, Professor Sir Stephen Powers, said, "We all know somebody who has had some kind of nasty winter virus in the last few weeks, and today's data showed that it's starting to trickle through to the hospital admissions with much higher volumes of norovirus cases compared to last year, and the continued impact of infections like flu and RSV in children at a hospital capacity, all likely to be exacerbated by this week's cold weather." He said there has been a significant reduction in ambulances handover delays despite high demand, almost twice the number of 111 calls being answered in a minute, and almost 1,500 more general and acute hospital beds open compared to the same time last year. However, it's clear that even before we entered December, the demand on the hospitals and staff is high, with more than 1,200 extra patients in hospitals compared to last year, and we know that this is likely to grow considerably before Christmas. His warning comes amid evidence that the winter pressure on the NHS is starting to grow, with 1 in 4 patients arriving by ambulance last week waiting at least 30 minutes to be handed over to A&E teams. Norovirus is the most common infectious cause of vomiting and diarrhea. It spreads easily through contact with someone who has a virus or with contaminated surfaces. While most people face the full recovery within 2 or 3 days, the virus can lead to dehydration, especially among the very young, the elderly, and those with weakened immune systems. Yes, of course, as you get older, your immune systems are not as strong as they used to be. Which is why it's really important. You should always try and keep yourself as fit and healthy as you possibly can. If you're watching this and you're someone who always stays in the home all the time and doesn't go out or very often, or you consider yourself a lazy person but you don't want to call yourself a lazy person, do try to keep yourself fit. Do try to do some kind of exercise. Do try to take walks. Step out the house, even for the benefit of yourself. Simple things like moving your hands and your feet, simple things like these. Do things that make the blood flow. Keep the blood flowing in your body. It helps. Even the smallest of little things like that. Like just spend a couple of minutes doing things like this. Even if you're in bed, guys. All those small things using different parts of your body. Anything that can just help keep the blood flowing, that kind of stuff is a good thing. It's a positive thing for you. Honestly, I'm just trying to help you guys, that. While most people make a full recovery within 2 or 3 days, the virus can lead to dehydration, especially among the very young, the elderly, whose weakened immune system. Make sure you drink plenty of water all the time, guys. Always make sure you drink plenty of water. As you guys know, I always have water at my side. If you can't have water, have something hot. Always make sure you're drinking something to look after your body, because otherwise it can lead to migraines, because I suffer from migraines and they're not very nice. But obviously, the simple three words, guys: look after body. Or should be look after your body, but you get the premise. The figure has been published as part of the first weekly snapshot of how NHS hospitals in England are performing this winter. The data shows that a quarter of patients arriving by ambulance at hospital last week waited at least 30 minutes to be handed over to A&E teams. Some 22,588 delays, over half an hour longer, were recorded across all hospital trusts in the week to November 26. This was 25% of the 89,506 arrivals by ambulance where the handover time was known. However, it is lower than 31% for the equivalent week last year. Some 9% of handovers last week, or 8,239 patients, were delayed by more than an hour compared with 15% of this week in 2022. Responding to the new figures, Regan, Director of Policy and Strategy of NHS Providers, said demand for and pressure on the NHS continues to bite. Last winter was the worst thing that many in the NHS can remember, and this time it could be even tougher. As temperatures plummet, pressure on the NHS hots up with the winter. Issues like bug-like flu added to the already high demand on service and staff. Every day, thousands of people are stuck in hospital beds when they could be recovering or closer at home, largely because of a lack of capacity and resources in social care and community health services, with serious knock-on effects on the rest of the already stretched system. Yeah, it's not going to be, as you guys should know already, it's not going to be a good time for the National Healthcare Service. If you have to go to the NHS, go. If it's an absolute emergency, please do. Obviously, there are numbers and there are websites that can help you to the benefit of your cause if you have access to the internet, well, you would do if you'd be listening to this video. But do everything you possibly can before going to the NHS, going into the NHS as a last resort. If it's an emergency, obviously do call them up to get the help that you possibly can. But if it's a non-emergency, try to seek the best possible advice you can to look after yourselves out there, because it's going to be a very tough winter for everyone out there. So please take care of yourselves more than anything, guys. So this next one we have is from Open Democracy. We've got this one and one more after that, and before we are done. So just a reminder, guys, if you can, really does help the channel and help the video. If you can, hit the like button, share across social media, and hit the bell notification icon so you'll be notified when I upload another video or go live. And also, guys, if you are in a given mood, no pressure whatsoever, and if you want to financially support me, you can do by buying me a coffee with the link in the description down below, or you can join me on Patreon to get access to some exclusive content. But I also on my Patreon share some free content as well, so you can sometimes get some additional videos, additional content that I do, covering articles where I go a bit more loose with my tongue with certain language that I can use on there as opposed to on here, guys. So this one is baby food firms are accused of exploiting patients to make £367 million for shareholders. What? Yeah, this is from Open Democracy. This is quite a couple of, obviously all these articles are a couple of days ago, it's important to emphasise that, but some of you guys may have missed these stories. So I think it's really important to show you whether you've seen them already, to refresh yourselves, or those who haven't seen them at all. So yeah, I'm just going to read it again. Baby food firms have accused of exploiting parents to make £367 million for shareholders. Price hikes on household goods transfer wealth from struggling families to uber rich investors, a charity has warned. So basically, obviously with food and cost of living is going up, obviously, some companies are using this as an opportunity to hike up prices more than they need to, in attempts to make even more money than they don't need to, in order to pay dividends to their shareholders. Yeah, how disgusting is that? This is baby food that babies need as well. I mean, it's I remember the prices now are just outrageous. It's so hard for parents these days to feed their children, and they're going to make it more difficult as well for them. I just think this headline just screams of disgusting and outrageous. Like I said, it's hard enough as it is, and they need help. Companies accused of artificially inflating the costs of baby formula to profit off and struggling parents paid out $360 million to shareholders in 2022, Open Democracy can reveal. Around 3/4 of branded food manufacturers push up the prices they change by retailers by more than the rise of their input costs, according to a new report by the Competitors and Market Authority, the CMA. The regulator said parents in particular were being forced to swallow soaring costs, with the price of branded infant formula rising by 25% between March 2021 and April 2023. 25%, that's a huge increase. That's outrageous increase. The increases are when the prices increase, they're normally not they're not really that big. But within the space of 2 years, they've bumped it up by 25%. And you can tell that screams of scam. Nestlé and Danone, which together account for 85% of the baby formula market in the UK, paid out £191.4 million and £175.6 million in dividends to shareholders respectively last year, according to accounts filed on the company's house. SMA and Little Steps baby formula brands are owned by Nestlé, while Danone products Aptamil and Cow and Gate. Yeah, they're the ones, obviously they're the ones brands that you see in your shops whenever, if for mothers and parents see, those are the main brands, obviously, for baby food in the country. Max Lawson, head of the Inequalities Policy and advocate for Oxfam, described the shareholders' payout as a transfer of wealth from ordinary people who are having to pay more at the till to their bank accounts of wealthy investors. He added, it's not like these corporations are taking these profits and then reinvesting or paying their workers more. Instead, we've seen an exploitation in share buybacks to drive up stock prices and their dividends. Yeah, that's the thing, yeah. The money doesn't go back into making things better for workers or for the product or anything else. No, it just goes into enriching themselves. Excuse me. It's just a case of trying to enrich themselves. It's what it is. That's all it is. Just looking to benefit themselves. And that's the thing with private companies. The number one thing private companies want is to basically make more money. And at the cheapest possible way they can do so. And they will look at every single cranny and angle to do that. It shows the true colours. There are some private companies that are not always about money, but the vast majority are. Some supermarkets reportedly began security tagging infant formula this year in response to what staff said were theft driven by desperate parents struggling with rising costs. Some have had to literally take them off the shelf and literally put a card there basically saying that if they want it they have to take it to the counter. It's the same thing, it's the same format that they do with razors, especially with men's razors. What they do is, instead of having the pack on the shop floor now, they put them behind the till and they put a card there so that if somebody wants a specific one, they got to take that to the till and then they can buy it there, because they just get stolen. It's and I understand, but obviously it's not the same thing with baby formula, and I understand that, but it's just too expensive. It's too expensive. What are they supposed to do? What's the alternative? Let me know in the comments section down below. What's the alternative they're supposed to do if they need it? The CMA report noted that unlike many other product categories, consumers often have no choice but to purchase infant formula. It said it is concerned there is too little competition to drive down the prices. Claire Murphy, Chief Executive of Reproductive Healthcare Charity BPAS, the British Pregnant Advisory Service, said the growing cost of formula in an area of huge concern, and it's high time that action was taken to address the needs of women and their families, many of whom are struggling to cope with a significant increase at a time when other costs have also risen. Some $293 million was also paid out to shareholders of companies that produce other household items whose prices have increased significantly beyond inflation for what the CMA deemed unclear reasons. Unclear reasons? Well, it's obviously to make more money, obviously, at our expense. Branded manufacturers of baked beans, mayonnaise and pet food have typically increased their unit profitability since 2021. In other words, for every kilo or litre of product sold, they have made a larger profit, according to the CMA's report. Yeah, they're taking advantage of this whole cost of living crisis. This is what they're doing. It's taking advantage of people who are already struggling, and those who are in the middle incomes who regularly buy their products. They're looking just to take a little bit more out of them so they can make a bit more money for themselves. That's basically what it is. And if people ask, what the ordinary person on the street will just think, it's just because of the cost of living crisis sort of thing. And they're saying that the companies are doing it, and they're the mindset from the British public will be that to some people it's not a case of they're not doing it in a case of making money. They're doing it for profit. They're doing it at the case of they have to keep up with the rest of the pack, basically. So not everyone will see it as these companies making huge sums of money off ordinary people. Not everyone will see that. We will see that. The vast majority of us here who watch this will see that. But not everyone will see that. It's very clever, and it's all, like I say, it's also a psychological thing as well. Because we didn't have a cost of living crisis, and they did this. There'd be in the media, there'd be a lot of anger. People would be saying, "WTF? Why are you screwing us over?" and all this kind of stuff. The regulator told Open Democracy that it was unable to share the names of branded manufacturers due to commercial sensitivity, though some products and companies were identified in its report. One example the regulator gave was the cost of a can of dog food, which rose by 52% between January 2022 and September 2023. 52%. Would be interesting if you could actually go back in time 2 years ago and go through all the shops and actually just look at all the prices and then come back through them now and just see the stark differences, and then you'll be able to identify the brands that are doing that. Brands owned by Mars and Nestlé account for around a third of sales of pet food in the UK. Mars Pet Care UK paid out £80 million in shareholders of 2022 after its profits rose by 14% according to accounts filed on Companies House. Again, making money off our expense, guys. The price of branded baked beans, including those made by companies like Heinz, rose by 42% between January 2022 and September 2023, the CMA said. Heinz handed its shareholders £100 million in the same period, according to accounts filed by the UK Subsidies on Companies House. Again, they're just ripping people off. Heinz told the CMA that price rises were due to rising energy, packaging and ingredients costs. Right, well, explain this then. Bollocks. Last year, products including Heinz beans, ketchup and a number of pet food brands were temporarily not stocked in Tesco's due to pricing disputes between the supermarket chain Heinz and Mart's Pet Care. I remember this story. So yeah, Tesco's were pricing dispute because they say the prices there was an argument over the pricing, but they managed to sort something out. But I think what they've done is done something to do with their Tesco Club card in order to help meet some of the costs meet some of the price and costs for consumers, potentially customers. Lemonade was another product where the CMA said it was unclear why prices have risen by 43% from January 2023 to May 2023. The market's leader Coca-Cola, which produces Schweppes, has paid dividends of £120 million to its shareholders from its UK subsidy in 2022, according to accounts filed on Companies House. Again, another one taking the mick. Fran Bernard, the commercial determinants coordinator at Food Campaign Group Sudan, said the Open Democracy's findings demonstrate that food manufacturers are taking advantage of families during the cost of living crisis in order to generate profits for their shareholders. The CMA opened its inquiry to food price inflation after it detected signs of profiteering following an earlier probe carried out of rising prices in groceries. Although the regulator found some evidence of companies contributing to price inflation, it concluded that competition was not under threat because consumers were able to subsidise most brand products for cheaper alternatives. Only Infant Power proved an exemption to this, and the CMA on Wednesday said it would further examine another weak competition had contributed to parents paying too much. Murphy of the BPAS had said, "No woman should be priced out of choosing how to feed her baby. We welcome the CMA's initial findings and committed to further investigation." Excuse me. So of course, obviously the main crux is the baby formula there, because of how it's there's not like a cheap alternative sort of thing so that people can turn to rely on, but that, and it basically forces them to basically steal, especially if they're not getting it from food banks or whatever, what in a desperate situation. And I feel so sorry for those people who are in that situation. It's an absolutely horrible situation for anyone having to do that, and it's extremely disheartening. You know, it's very important that the babies are able to get the food that they need. Especially at the infant age that they are. It's really, really important. And to add on that, obviously the crux of companies here are using this cost of living crisis as a smokescreen to basically profiteer off ordinary income people here. Their brands, who already are paying more for, are actually stumping up the prices, and they're basically, as I said, they're painting the picture that they're doing it because of a cost of living crisis. But the CMA aren't really need to do more here, because it just feels like that they're getting away with it scot-free, and people don't seem to realise that it's happening. It's really, really bad, if I'm honest, guys. You're already struggling enough as it is, guys. It's struggling enough as it is. Just just not good at all, guys. Really is not. So, guys, one last story for you guys from Byline Times, of course. This one here. The headline is: the government refuses to expand the list of accepting voter ID despite thousands being turned away from the polls. More than 100,000 voters could be turned away at the next general election, according to one forecast. So essentially, guys, this story is about... it's obviously really, really important that with voter ID, people are able to have the ID they need to be able to cast their vote at the general election, or any election for that matter, because it is their democratic right. Now, since the introduction of ID, there's only been a limited amount of IDs that have been deemed acceptable. And the problem is that the younger generation are being exempt from their certain IDs from being it. Now, my premise is, of course, is that if you're going to have ID, everyone should be issued a free ID, a free national identity card of some sort, something like they have in Europe, to be issued to everyone for free, so that they're able to cast their vote at the general election if we're going to be going down that. If not, then the whole ID thing should be scrapped so that everyone is able to vote. Because what we're doing here is voter suppressing. This is essentially voter suppression. That's pretty much what it is, plain and simple, because you're denying a certain section of society, denying them the right to be able to democratically vote who they want to vote for. I know we don't have a fair election system of a first past the post system, but that still doesn't mean that people shouldn't be able to cast their vote either. So the government has rejected calls to let voters bring in alternative forms of voter identification following May's elections, despite at least 14,000 voters being turned away from the polling stations and denied a vote in England. So obviously we don't know the full accuracy of that number, because not everyone was counted when they were denied voting at certain places. Campaigners and the official election watchdogs, which have called for the government to expand its list of acceptable photo IDs following voter disenfranchisement at the local elections. But responding to electoral commissions today, Minister Simon Horse said the government has been unable to identify any additions that would succeed in significantly increasing coverage in the group's identity, and more generally, many of the forms of the photographic identification considered during our review, and also risk undermining the security element of the policy as their application process is not sufficiently robust. This is a load of hogwash. He's basically just trying to tell people that there's no more needs to be done, which is absolutely nonsense. 14,000 people have been denied, and that number is going to be huge at the general election. A huge amount of people are going to be denied, and it's going to be down to independent campaigning groups, independent organisers, fundraisers, social media. It's going to be down to lots of volunteers and people to tell people that they need to vote and what ID they need to do to bring that to them at the polling booth. Because they do not want to shout about the ID. They don't want to shout about it. The voter ID rules, which former Minister Jacob Rees-Mogg has admitted were a form of gerrymandering to bolster the government's party, currently excludes several forms of ID used by young people, including young persons' rail cards, as some form of ID. Yeah, see, this is nonsense here. That senior people are able to, most senior cards are acceptable, but younger people are not. So you tell me what's fair. The Minister says the key challenge is diminishing the return of including additional documents on the list. Research by the Government and Electoral Commission has shown consistently that the vast majority of the electorate, 96%, hold a form of photographic identification that is on the existing list. As such, it is likely that a similar percentage of holders of any potential additional document, which also holds another document that is on the current list and therefore already accepted, such as addition, would not be able to significantly increase coverage. Liberal Democrat spokesperson for Housing, Community and Local Government, Helen Morgan MP, said the government response was a sick joke. It is a sick joke. The Conservative Party is running scared of democratic accountability. The voter ID legislation brought in by this government is coherent to our democracy. Voter ID at the local elections was a shamble, and now this Conservative government is doubling down. They are content to sit on their hands and witness another election plagued by chaos while people's voices are being denied, Morgan told Byline Times. Tom Bake, director of campaign group Unlock Democracy, added, "There is still time to pull the plug on this unnecessary, expensive, discriminatory measure. Voter ID must be scrapped." The government appears to be relying on Council's free Volunteer Authority Certificate (VAC), which offers to those who lack other forms of acceptable identification. But an independent report from the government by the IFF found that the awareness of the free ID is very low, with only 21% of voting age adults and 26% of those without accepting photographic ID being aware of it in May. The government says improving awareness is now a priority. They say that, but how much of a priority they're going to do it is the real question. The government has also rebuffed a call from the Electoral Commission to extend the deadline for applying for free voter certificates, which is cut off 6 working days before a poll. The minister says they do not want to put extra burdens on electoral offices by having a deadline closer to polling day. The Conservatives also firmly oppose the use of attestation or vouchering at polling station, where someone with ID can attest that someone who lacks it is who they say they are. Ministers claim vouching could compromise the integrity of the system. Again, there is barely any voter fraud. There's been barely any voter fraud in the UK electoral system. Almost barely any. What is it? 2%, less than 1%, something like that? There's been barely any. This is nonsense. All nonsense is what this is. Ministers have also rejected calls for the impact of voter ID to be recorded at each election. 2 more general elections will be monitored comprehensively for numbers turning away. After that, it will be up to individuals returning officers, making it difficult to get a national picture on the number of people denied a vote. All voters in the UK will have to bring photo ID at next year's general elections. Scotland and Wales have not introduced voter ID for local elections, but must follow the UK-wide rules for parliamentary ones. Northern Ireland are already using voter ID following mass fraud allegations related to sectarianism voting. Labour MP Dawn Butler told Byline Times that the ID policy was yet more gerrymandering from the Tories. Data show thousands were turned away in May, and now they're refusing measures to prevent it happening again. We should try to extend the franchise, not decrease it, which is what the Tories are doing by refusing to add reasonable extra forms of voter ID. I believe it's now discriminatory and serves only to disenfranchise people, she added. Never forget when the mask slip and Jacob Rees-Mogg admitted voter ID laws were introduced to gerrymandered elections for the Tories. The message is clear: the Conservative Party does not want you to use your right to vote, Butler said. And I absolutely 100% agree with that statement. Official analysis by the IFF Research for the Government has also been published, analysing the impact of the introduction of photographic voter ID. The report notes that some confusion among polling station staff regarding why certain types of photographic ID were accepted and others were not. It also finds that allegations of impersonation fraud in May 2023 elections were very low, consistent with previous elections. There were also concerns that some local election offices may not be able to handle a surge in applicants for free voter authority certificates in a general election. Commenting on the findings, Tom Bake had said, "This report contains a statement of the bleeding obvious. Those without accepting the photographic ID were much more likely to say that the voter identification requirement makes them less likely to vote. What the report lacks is any real thought about what to do about it. With 14,000 turned away in May, we're on track to see more than 100,000 people turned away from the polling station at the next general election." I think it would be more than that. If we're not shouting and screaming about it enough, I think more people are going to end up getting turned away. The IFF research shows that the people are more likely to have heard nothing at all about the ID requirements when people who rarely never voted at local elections, 18%, ethnic minorities, 12%, and younger adults, 11%, those of age 18 to 34. Yeah, like, there needs to be literally like a social media campaign. Like, you need to be putting it on TikTok, you need to be putting it on Facebook, Twitter, and all that kind of stuff. You need to be basically putting it out there, telling the youngsters that they need to vote and this is what they need to bring. If you put it on social media, you're more likely to get young voters to be able to vote and be able to cast their vote as well. So it needs publicity, not just on the TV. Labour refused to say whether it will repeal the ID requirements if in government when asked by Byline Times earlier this year. The Lib Dems back repeal of the ID rules. The full list of acceptable IDs is published here, so they've got a list there. Byline Times have extensively covered the voter ID rollout and will be monitoring further developments. Shout Out UK and Greater London Authority have launched a new WhatsApp chatbot and giving advice on ID and on registering vote there. So the number there is +44 7908 820 12136 to use it there, guys. if you can see that there on your screen. So obviously it's really important that if you have the ability to vote, to cast your vote. I understand why some people may not want to vote, given what's been happening over the last 30 years, and some people may feel deflated and feel that their vote is not meaningless anymore. But I'm here to tell you that your vote matters. Whatever your political differences, or if you don't have any allegiance at all and you just don't care, your vote matters. Your voice matters. Everyone's voices matter. And this next general election is important. The very future direction of this country is going to count on you and where you cast your vote. Now, I understand that we don't have proportional representation, which is a fair system, and we have a first past the post system. We need to tactically vote out the Conservative Party, and we need to show them that what they have done for the last 13 years has been, the damage has been immeasurable, and they need to be shown that. And we need to be able to scrutinise and show the Labour Party that we are not going to just simply let them have power for 4 years and for 4 years plus, and expect them to change everything for the better. If we don't believe that they're going to change everything for the better, their feet must be held just as much to the fire as the Conservatives need to be held for the last 13 years, and there needs to be rightful accountability of that. Now, in terms of voter ID, please make sure you have the right suitable ID for you. If you don't, please go out of your way to look at what you need to get the ID you need accountable for you. It is really, really important, guys. And on that note, guys, I want to say a big thank you to everyone who has watched Regan's Newsround. Let me know what you guys think about all the different articles that I've covered today in the comments section and down below. Let me know what you think about each and every one of them if you have any thoughts to share. Before you go on your way out, guys, if you can, hit the like button, be greatly appreciated. Share across social media, hit that bell notification icon so you'll be notified of when I go live or when I upload another video. And of course, if you guys want to financially support me, and you're under no obligations to do so, but if you want to, it'd be greatly appreciated. You can do so by buying me a coffee or joining me on Patreon. The links are in the description. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope to catch you all very, very soon.